When I was 19, my mom was sent to prison for being the town drug dealer. The most interesting part of this being that my hometown is microscopic small. I graduated with a class of 7, whole high school, 25 kids. Everyone knows everything. Navigating this my whole life has been quite a roller coaster ride. I would love to discuss. Big fan. So you're going to go by Jay right now because we're not sure if you're going to be anonymous or not. So Jay, where are you right now? What state?
So I live in Oregon, Portland, Oregon.
And is that where you grew up?
No. So I grew up in Washington. It's not very far from here, actually. It's only about like an hour and a half, 2 hours or so. Kind of like right on the border between Washington and Oregon. Yeah.
And that's where this story takes place, I guess.
Yeah. So I've lived there my entire life, basically. It's kind of weird to think of a town these days that doesn't have cell phone service or a stoplight in the town or, or a real grocery store. But that's kind of the reality I grew up in, which was just crazy once you get out of it to see how small it actually was, like once you're not living there anymore.
Yeah, did you realize, because like when I did the Mormon guy interview, which was so interesting, I had the question for him of like, when did you realize that wasn't how everyone lived? Like, when did you realize you were in a small town and that this wasn't all of America lived like that?
I think I was actually pretty young because I was born in California. And so I had family there that I would visit, every year since I was little. My grandmother lived in California. And so, I would be there once a year and they would talk about the schools that they grew up going to, or my parents would speak about their schools and their towns that they grew up because they were very much city people their entire lives. And so I knew that there were very different circumstances for other kids, and that's how they grew up. But I just never experienced going to like a big school or living in a city.
How far is this town from anything major? Like, how long did it take you to get to the airport?
The airport, so Portland would be the closest airport, and that's about 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
So they have and so even like grocery stores, there's like little stores. There's one little market, and it's like basically like a gas station, and then there's like actual gas station, and then there's like my family's bar, weirdly enough. So my family owned a bar there. But like a real grocery store is about 55 minutes away, 45 if you drive like the regulars.
So tell us about growing up. What was your family layout? What was your house like?
Yeah.
Just paint a picture.
Yeah, so there's like the whole town itself is maybe a mile long, I'd say. It's very walkable, very small, obviously. And so I had my aunt and uncle my great aunt and uncle, they ran the bar basically. And then they had a house, like we called it suburbia. It's like, it's not really a real suburbia, obviously. So they lived out there. And then my parents lived in town in a few different houses growing up. And I was an only child until I was about 7. And then my little sister was born. And then when I was 14, my brother was born. So we're all very spread out in age, about 7 years actually, which is weird. But so yeah, we lived in, some houses up what we call Slob Hill. And then there's Snob Hill. It's so funny because they had like the nicer houses where like all the teachers in the town would live, right? Because they had like the most income, I would say, in the town. So they had the nicer houses. And then Slob Hill is like kind of right next to it. And it's just kind of like, it's very, it's not great, honestly.
Was that a name that you guys coined, or was it like known throughout the town?
Oh, the town.
Oh, so everyone called it Slob Hill.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And Snob Hill, and like some of the teachers, they wouldn't like that we would refer to that their part of town as Snob Hill. Like it was kind of like they thought it was rude. And then there's just like like the main downtown basically. And so we lived in a couple different houses there. Some of them were just pretty gross growing up just because they weren't well maintained. And then my parents finally, and then we lived with my aunt and uncle for a while because my parents almost got custody taken away from us after my sister was born. And in order for CPS not to take us, basically my aunt and uncle took us in, and we all lived together in this house. And there's like a ton of us, very full house. And then once my aunt started kind of having some more issues with her alcoholism, it was getting like very out of hand. My parents decided that they were done living there because things just kept hitting the fan. It was just not a good living environment. And so they bought their own house in town on 3rd Street, which is, there's like 3 major streets, or 4, maybe 4 streets. And so, yeah, we bought a house down there when I was about maybe 12, I would say.
Are your parents still married?
No. So
Okay.
they got divorced when I was, I would say 14 or 15. So like not shortly after my brother was born. But they had broken up a good time, actually broken up a few times throughout my childhood, I would say. The most serious being when I was in middle school. My mom, I didn't specify, but my mom was an addict, a meth addict. And she had been since she was 16, basically.
Wow.
Off and on. Yeah, so very young. And that really just took a toll on their relationship. And my dad had a lot of anger issues, and both had very toxic upbringings. And so their marriage and them being together was never like a very stable relationship. So eventually, when I was a teenager, they finally called it quits for good, which I was very relieved for, because it was not fun to grow up in the house with them together.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So your submission talks heavily about your mom and the fact that she was known as the town drug dealer and that the community was so small. So I'll just kind of let you take it from here, explaining, how did you learn your mom was a drug dealer? How did that function in the town?
So she wasn't always, obviously. So my parents were together for a long time, and she was always like off and on of drugs, mostly on, my entire life. And then when my parents split up for good, my mom got an apartment of her own in the town. And that is when things really went downhill for her, if I'm being honest. Without my dad kind of there to control things as much as he could. Obviously, that wasn't a lot, because you can't make somebody stop using.
How old were you when this happened?
14 or maybe 15. It was in between 14 and 15.
Were you living with her or your aunt at the time?
So we had moved into the town and had a house for a while that he bought. My dad bought a house. We'd all lived there together for a while. So maybe, I want to say like 12 was when we moved into that house from my aunts. So we lived with my parents in that house that they bought for, I think, a couple years, maybe 3 years max. And then things just they just were terrible. And so they split up. My mom got an apartment. I was probably between 14 and 15. And after that, it got so bad. It was just a steady decline of living circumstances.
When you say bad, because of the meth?
Yeah, so my mom didn't have easy access to money anymore. My dad paid her rent and gave her maybe, a little bit of money on the side, but it was not much. It's because, he's not rich. And that was like what he had to pay for child support. So, yeah, once we moved in that apartment, my mom didn't have a lot of money. So what she was doing in order to maintain her drug habit was selling drugs. And she only started selling drugs because of the fact that she was, poor and already had an addiction. But mostly, like, the main motivator was this guy she started dating, who was just, and to this day, probably the person I fucking hate most in the world. He just was, to paint the picture, has like 4 kids of his own, doesn't take care of any of them. One of them, that he impregnated this very young girl in the town when he was, in his 20s, and had 2 kids with her, and like I said, just takes and takes and takes from women, and just is a low life. So he kind of gave her the idea to start selling drugs, and then all of a sudden this man moves into the apartment with us, and it's just tweaker activities from there on out. Just collections of tools and bikes, and just really takes over. And my mom just all of a sudden is not paying attention to us like she used to, and she gets very defensive if I say anything about not liking this man. And
did you know this man before they started dating? Since the town's so small?
I knew of him.
Okay.
It was a joke to me that she would ever date this man.
What was his reputation?
Disgusting. He was a tweaker, a known tweaker. I just couldn't believe my mom would be interested in somebody like him. He's not cute. He's got like a furrowed caveman brow. He's missing a tooth.
This is going to sound really ignorant. What's a tweaker? I just don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry. A tweaker is like a slang for somebody who uses drugs in the West
I'm glad
Coast.
You clarified.
Yeah, tweaker is like a heavy drug user.
Okay.
But sorry, I guess not everybody knows that slang.
No, I'm glad you explained it, because I'm just ignorant to it. My other question, if you wouldn't mind explaining for my ignorance of meth, is what does when someone, I know what alcoholism looks like when someone's drunk or high on marijuana or cocaine, but what does a meth addiction look like, if you wouldn't mind just kind of painting that so we can understand as a kid what that would have been like?
It's sad is what it is. It looks awful. Eventually your teeth rot out of your head. You don't sleep. I mean, it got to the point where my mom would be having a conversation with us in the middle of the day and she'd just fall asleep. Because you don't really sleep, your brain is just going constantly. You're up all night, you don't sleep, and then all of a sudden you just like nod off in the middle of a conversation, kind of like you're on heroin or something. It's so weird, you know? But you just go until, you should see some of the people that I refer to as like tweakers, the weird things that they do. I mean, they take things apart, they steal things and like take apart like like a CD player or like a TV, and then like they're going to put it back together. And they never put it back together. I mean, it just does weird things to your mind.
That must have been so confusing and painful as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, I always knew that my mom, I was the oldest person. I was the oldest kid, and I was the one raising my siblings along with my parents so I knew my mom had a drug problem when I was young. But like I said, it was really hard to differentiate, like, if my mom was high or not, because now as an adult, I realized that she was just pretty much always high. Like, that sounds bad, and there were definitely periods of time when she wasn't using. But I just came to know that the way my mom was it was weird to see her sober in a way. Like, it was just so normal of her being on drugs for me.
Yeah. So she starts dating this guy. We'll call him the tweaker because now I like that term for him. She starts dating the tweaker, and you're living in this apartment. When you say you were saying like they buy bicycles or they're bringing in bicycles. Is that kind of what you were referring to as like the addiction of things?
Yeah, like, that's the thing. So, I mean, one of the things that comes along with selling drugs is that when people don't got money, they're trading weird shit with you, like guns or tools or things that they've stolen, I guess, or clothes, or it could be anything. Like they're trading their lives away. It's very sad, to be honest with you. And so yeah, he was all of a sudden he's like bringing all this weird shit in the house.
Did he introduce her to meth, or she had been an addict?
Oh, she'd already been an addict my entire life. Yeah.
And where did they get the meth, or were they making it if they were selling it?
They weren't making it. They would Portland. They would drive the 2 hours to Portland, buy in bulk, and then come back.
So she starts being the prominent dealer in your town. What does that look like?
Yes. So it looks like fucking tweakers coming into your house at all hours of the day, like invading your space and just never leaving. Like, there's always people in and out, always people coming in and out. And just people I don't like. I've grown up in a small town, and I know everything, just like they know everything about me. I know everything about them, and they're not people I want around.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what time of day it is. Someone's at your house, sitting on the couch waiting, or just around my siblings that I don't want them around. And I just know that, like, if my dad hears that this person's over at our apartment, it's just going to be World War III.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Where is your dad?
He doesn't have control for a lot of this. Like, it's so hard to explain the dynamic of all of this. It's like, we knew that my mom shouldn't, especially towards the end, have had custody anymore. Like, everybody in the situation knew this, but it's like heartbreaking to take away somebody's kids from them, And I was there, so it's not like anything like really terrible ever happened to the kids because of these people, because I was always there. Like, and the tweakers did not like me. They were very respectful to me, but they feared me, to be honest with you. Like, they were always very polite to me, and like, and every once in a while you get like a ballsy one that would just come in and like look in the fridge. They just walk in the house and just like open the fridge, and I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing? Excuse me, do you live here? Like, get out. It's just the nerve of people, honestly. But yeah, he was angry. My dad was angry, because he felt like he had no control. And he doesn't really have control of who my mom has around, or is what she's doing. And nobody wanted to take custody away from her because, throughout all this, she was still a mom. It was just very muddled.
Yeah. So you're around 12, estimating, at this time.
At the apartment, I was 14.
14, sorry. So your sister's 7.
Mm-hmm.
And your brother has just been born?
He was probably about 1 year old, yeah, I would say.
And the brother is with your father. It's your father's son.
Oh, yes. We all have the same parents. Yep.
So she has this kid. She leaves, goes to the apartment, starts dating this other guy while she has a 1-year-old, essentially.
Yeah, basically. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's so weird. My first thought goes to like, well, what are the police doing? This is like such an ignorant thought, but like, you're in this small town. Are the police just all over this, or no? Is it
So when she first started dealing and she was in that apartment, it wasn't like a high profile. Like people really knew at first, like they knew that there was definitely some tweaker activity going on over there. Like the landlord and the neighbors, everyone's in the business because everybody's in your business all the time,
Yeah.
your whole life. So they definitely start to assume that that's what's going on. But it's funny enough, there's no police station in our town at all. The closest police station is 45 minutes away.
No way.
Yes, there's no, when there's a cop in this town I grew up in, it's weird. You definitely notice,
Oh my God. I don't know why when I think of like small town America, I think of like police being a huge part of small town America.
I'm sure that that's probably the case in most places, but there was not a designated police station in our town, and like I said, yeah, so 45 minutes away. If you have a heart attack, you're probably going to die out there. There's nothing there.
Wow. Okay, now I'm really picturing it all. That even more so shows me that you were put in this massive protector/survival mode so early on. Because here I was thinking like, oh, well, the police probably show up at any point. But no, it's like you actually had no protecting.
Yeah, we never got the cops called. My mom never got the cops called on her, I don't think, until she got her house busted into.
Yeah, we'll
that
get
was
to that.
The cops being called. Yeah.
What are your teachers? Is anyone looking out for you?
You know what? I don't know. I have a family friend of mine that I grew up with a girl, and her mother really loved me a lot, and so she would look out for me in ways. But to be quite honest with you, no, I don't think so. Like, there's only so much they can do. So no, it's not like I had anybody who was actively checking in on me about how I was, and what can they do? I don't know. So no, I guess that question kind of makes me sad, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
How does your mom go from this place to a place of sobriety?
Without extreme intervention. She was never probably going to stop doing what she was doing unless she had gotten sentenced to prison, which is so sad. And I think about, like when you're in these situations, you think about like, what if I could have said something to, snap her back into reality? Or, what if she knew that she was going to get busted? But it's like, it needed to happen.
Can you tell us the story of the busting leading up to that and everything?
Yeah, so my mom gets kicked out of that apartment. This is over a span of a few years, right? So from basically that apartment, I'm a freshman in high school. She didn't get busted until I was 19, so I'd been graduated for a year. I move out of that apartment before she gets kicked out of it because I was angry because I didn't like that he was there, the tweaker guy was there. And it was just really affecting my relationship with her because it was just not okay. The things I felt like were happening, and I hated him. And so we butted heads so badly that we almost fought, like physically. And eventually my dad's like, you can just move in with me. And that was fine for a while. And then me and my dad didn't get along very much either. So when I was like 17, I was living on my own. But anyway, so she gets kicked out of that apartment. She moves into like a trailer, not like with hookups, like a freaking trailer on somebody's property, live in it real rough for a long time until she eventually gets kicked out of there. And a tweaker friend of hers offers his literal crack shack. Okay, this thing is like the most disgusting, foreclosed.
Have you been in there?
Yes, yeah, we lived there for a while. It was like on stilts. I wish I could. You know what? I could try and get you a picture of this place.
I would love to see the crack shack.
It's just like falling apart. It's like sticks of a house on stilts, and because it was on Slob Hill, right? So everything's like, It's not very livable up there, to be honest. And it was just horrendous. And I think about now, and I show my boyfriend now that when we drove through there for the first time, and he sees this house that we were living in, he's just like, what are you talking about? It doesn't look habitable, and it really wasn't.
I was just curious, when you said at 17 you were living alone, where were you living for that period?
So I moved out of my dad's, and I moved in with a friend for a little less than a year, I'd say. So it just got bad between my father and I because he felt like, I don't know, both my parents always kind of felt like I was too much like the other parent. And they hated each other. They couldn't even have a conversation, to be honest. He was always screaming matches, saying the most awful things to each other. So they couldn't speak even to each other. And so, I mean, I butted heads with both of them because I was so angry most of the time as a kid, and as a teenager especially. I was just like so over it, you know. And they both, yeah, like we just couldn't get along. I couldn't get along for a prolonged amount of time with either of them. So I moved in with a friend, and I stayed with her and her boyfriend for, I don't know, like a little bit less than a year. And then like midway through my senior year, I just kind of left because it was uncomfortable for me there. Like I could tell that my friend's boyfriend didn't really want me there anymore, and I was being a burden. I just didn't have anywhere else to go. My friend was just offering to be there, but it wasn't his job to, you know, have a teenager in his house, you know. So I moved out, and I kind of was like living out of my car. I mean, I'd sleep at my mom's, but everything I owned was in my car. So it was kind of weird, but yeah.
And at this point, she moved into the crack shack.
The crack shack, yeah. And it was her friend's crack shack, and he was also an addict, and so he's like, hey, I want you to keep selling drugs, basically. So move him to my crack shack.
What was in the crack shack physically? Just a lot of drugs?
So no, I mean, it was just like, well, before it wasn't even livable, so they had to make it livable, you know. And then that's when they started selling drugs out of it, basically. And that's when shit really hit the fan. I mean, the neighbors that are right next to them were also like this. Oh my god, everyone's like related in some way. So her neighbors were the biggest reason I would say that she eventually got busted. Like they were definitely probably like recording her, sending it to the police, and we come to find out, like my dad had a girlfriend for a while who was also like deeply, you know, lived in this town her whole life, and she was like emailing the police about my mom. We came to find out years later she was like narking on my mom to the cops as well. But these neighbors like really hated my mom, and they were like kind of the family that owned the one market in the town. So yeah, so they started like recording and sending stuff to the police about her, and so that's why she got busted, basically. So it had been going on for a while, and then the whole way that she ended up getting busted was that she had a friend. I mean, these are all her friends that she's known for forever, really. And so this guy, his name was Tim. He got into some minor legal trouble, and they're like, "Do you want to go to jail for a couple of months, or do you want to narc out the town drug dealer?" So he did 3 controlled buys on my mom. I actually distinctly remember the last one that he did on her. I mean, obviously we didn't know at the time, but we sat down and we were talking in the living room. This is somebody I knew.
And he was wearing a wire.
I don't think that he was wearing a wire. I don't think he even had to wear a wire. Basically, he had to meet up with the cops before and after. They gave him money. He got the drugs and brought him the drugs, them the drugs. And that's all that it was. I mean, they just have to do it 3 times. And so and you know what's crazy is he's still out and doing that to other people in the town. It's like they don't believe my mom or something. It's crazy. But yeah, so I mean, if you want me to take you through the actual, like, you know, when they raided her house. So
were you there?
No, my little brother was there.
Ugh.
He was like 5. It was awful. He can't even talk about it still to this day. So when I was 18, I moved to Eugene, Oregon, and I was going to go to college there. That didn't end up happening, which honestly was a good thing, because if I was enrolled in school and my mom got busted, it would have just been chaos. I don't know how I would have. It just would have created a lot more issues. And so we lived in Eugene for a while, my boyfriend and I at the time, and then moved to the Dalles, Oregon, because I was like, it wasn't working out really in Eugene. I didn't go to school. That's the reason we were there, blah, blah, blah. And then one day I am just driving around doing errands with my boyfriend, and I get a call from my dad, and he says, "Your mom just got busted." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like the cops just broke into your mom's house and fucking busted her. She went to jail. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I couldn't fathom it. I didn't think it would ever happen, and it was just so crazy to me that it was happening. So basically, what had happened was, this was in the middle of winter. My mom's pipes were all frozen shut because that house was a piece of shit. No running water at the moment. And that's an important detail because she couldn't have done anything with the drugs. Like, she couldn't have flushed them or done anything, you know. I mean, the house was just in disarray, and it was disgusting. And anyway, so the cops all come in a line down the hill, and you can see them because it's like, and they just go straight to my mom's house, and my sister's in school, poor thing, and my little brother's just sitting on the couch watching TV. He's 5 years old, and the cops just bust in the house and basically not drag my mom out in handcuffs, but take her out. I mean, you know. And she's just telling my little brother, like, it's okay, and he can't even look at her. He's just so, like, distraught. He doesn't know what's happening. And then the cops took my brother and went to the school and pulled my sister out of school, and basically gave him to my dad. So, I mean, that's a very traumatic experience for my brother, and I've tried to talk to him about it before, but he shuts down. So,
Yeah.
just
Well,
very embarrassing too for my sister who is still in school. It's not like everybody knows what's going on. It gets around very quickly. I graduated with 25 kids in the high school. My sister was
it's
probably in
insane.
middle school, or I don't even know if she was in middle school at this time. Yeah, middle school. I mean, this cop comes to the school.
And this was a public school?
Yeah, it's just so tiny. It's just so tiny that like there's only 25 kids in the whole high school.
I know, it like sounds like a private school, but it's actually public.
I know it's crazy whenever I tell anybody that. They don't believe me.
So did you come home, or what happened to your mom after that? What happened with you through that?
So I drove home to my hometown, which was like, at that point I was like living like an hour away. So it was, 45 minutes. And so I drove home, I drove there, and I was like, I mean, distraught. It doesn't feel real. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the future holds. And they the cops locked our dog, my sibling's dog, in the house. Like, we couldn't get into the house. We had to break into the house to get the dog out. And I mean, it was just crazy. I mean, it's a good thing they didn't like try to kill him or something, right? Because he's a big dog. It's kind of scary looking. I break into the house to get him out of there, and I don't know, it was just so crazy. I went to the house, and it was just in disarray. It was so bad. I mean, you couldn't even walk on the floor. That's how much it got tore up. Weirdly enough, they left drugs, some of the drugs, and didn't, I don't know if they didn't realize or they just didn't want anything to do with it or what, but and then my mom's other tweaker friend came and heard the news and was also a big part of her dealing. Just takes them. She's like, oh, I'll take these off my
Free drugs.
yeah.
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 Oh my God.
Basically. Take some and I'll get rid of these for you. Don't worry about, whatever. I mean, obviously I didn't want them, so I was like, yes, please get rid of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then, I mean, the aftermath was just trying to figure out what was next. I mean, I never knew anybody that was in jail in my life, So she was at the county jail for, I don't know, maybe a few months before she got sentenced and sent up to the top of Washington. I can't even remember the name of the town.
How long did she go to, was it prison at that point?
Yeah, so it's so hard to explain, but the police system there is pretty just ridiculous. And there's this new, there's this new sheriff in town, and it's just so white trash, honestly. They posted these huge banners everywhere. It's like, this is Bob warning to you, if you do drugs and click I mean, these are posted everywhere. It just looks so bad. If you do drugs, get out now, or else, basically, kind of just the most. I should probably try to find a picture of those signs for you too, just so you know what I'm talking about. I mean, it's so ridiculous. So they wanted to make an example out of her, and mind you, my mom had never had a real criminal offense before. One time she got arrested for a domestic dispute between her and my father, but she had no record really.
Yeah.
And they illegally sentenced her to 10 years with no time off, meaning she couldn't earn good time, good behavior time, where they reduced your sentence. And because she was it's school zone enhancements, because I mean everybody in the town is basically within the school zone by so many, they have school zone enhancements. If you're dealing within so many feet of the school,
yards of the school,
they really get you there. But I mean, everybody lives within that many feet basically from the school. It's just how it is there. And she was pretty close to the school. And so they sentenced her, and I couldn't believe it. I really thought my mom was going to be in prison for 10 years. But they, like I said, they kind of wanted to make an example out of her. This is what happens if you sell drugs in our county. No mercy, no programs to help anybody be sober or get better. Basically, it's just screw you, And so she gets sentenced, and then come to find out when she got up there that the way they sentenced her was not legal, and it was completely incorrect. And so they had to send her back to get resentenced. And they were like, you can't say that someone doesn't earn good time off. And I forget what else was wrong with the sentencing.
Who figured that out? Was this a good lawyer that she was able to get, or just the
No.
state?
What a joke her lawyer was. I mean, he's over there joking around with the prosecutor the entire time.
Sure.
I mean, they didn't care about her.
So who kind of saved the day on that end?
Well, the prison system that she was sentenced and sent up to was this is incorrect, and my mom. Oh, and then this another thing. So the whole time I was in high school, that guy that got my mom selling drugs in the first place, he went to prison for some other thing. This whole time he's in prison. My mom's selling more drugs to pay for money on his books and drive all the way down to Salem, Oregon to visit him and, just hold him down basically and take care of him while he's in prison. And then as soon as she gets sentenced to prison, he steals all her shit, sells it. I mean, I don't have anything of my mom's from before, and neither does she besides her wedding ring. I mean, pictures, we've somehow recovered pictures and all of that. But yeah, just like a really shitty situation.
Yeah, he turned on her, the OG tweaker.
Oh, yeah. That's what I'm saying. I always told her, if you think if he doesn't even care enough to raise his own kids or give a shit about his kids, that he's going to care about you, I mean, you're just crazy. It's just not realistic. But yeah, so back to her prison sentencing. So she was up, I think she served like 4.5 to 5 years, ended up serving that much time. But she would have gotten less. She would have been in there for like 2 years max, I think, had she just taken the plea deal. But I mean, he was in her ear telling her that, you just go to trial, you'll be fine. No, bad idea. Very bad idea.
When she was taken to prison, I mean, she must have had the hardest detox. Because it's not like you're going to rehab. You're going to prison and you can't do drugs all of a sudden.
So, weirdly enough, meth is actually pretty easy to detox off of. You just sleep a lot. You sleep for like 2 weeks, basically. And that's the detox. It's not that hard. It's not like opiates where your body hurts and you want to die. Meth is just like you sleep a lot. But it's not as bad. It sounds crazy, but...
Did she did she get drugs in prison? I know that
No.
happens a lot. So she stayed clean through her sentence.
Yeah. So the thing about it that was really sad is like my mom wasn't enjoying getting high anymore, and she hadn't been for a very long time. She was just she'd been on drugs since she was 16.
Yeah, she
it was
didn't know
just
another
maintaining.
way.
She was just maintaining. And so when she got busted and actually went to prison, she was done, and she's been done from then on out. She says she doesn't have a desire anymore. It's just like she was living in a situation that it was like just all she knew basically. And, she was so tired of it for so long and living like that when she's had the opportunity to get sober and live somewhere else, that she's not on drugs anymore. She's really transformed into a person that.
Do you have a relationship with her now?
Yeah, I mean, we're close and, we're pretty close throughout all of this for the most part. And, it was so weird because when she went to prison, it was like, devastating at first to me, but then it's almost like I appreciated it, and I know that sounds really bad.
I was going to ask you that next. I was like, when you were talking about your dad's girlfriend that she had essentially snitched and how painful it is to watch your mom go to prison, was there any level of relief that it was finally going to come to an end?
It was a lot of level of relief. It was anger, and to be honest, it was like sadness at first. It's kind of like, the stages of grief, but for the most part, all of a sudden, I was not so stressed out anymore about what was going on. I mean, we could do a whole nother episode on the situations I've been in just with the tweakers around, my whole life. Just, It was just like very stressful. I was very angry. I was like a very angry kid, and all of a sudden it's like, she's gone. I know where she's at. She's in a controlled environment. I know my siblings are fine. I mean, they're sad and they don't have a mom, and it's so unfair. But, I mean, I know she's safe. She's not doing drugs. She's not out, I don't think she's going to die. So yeah, it was like relieving. And then it was like almost like a numbness. Like I didn't even want to go visit her. Not that I had anger, but it's like, it was almost just like, I need a break from all of this. I went to her periodically. Yeah, but I could have definitely gone and seen her more. But it just like, I just couldn't even do it anymore in a lot of ways. And I feel bad about that. But, I just needed a break.
Was your dad ever using, or he was pretty sober through it all?
When they were younger, they would party together, but no, my dad
like your
isn't addiction. He doesn't really have an addiction issue,
Yeah.
It's just crazy. Some people just don't have an addiction issue. They can do drugs and then stop, or like I know people who can like party casually with any drugs, really, and they're fine. It's not a priority in their life. It's it's kind of like a very taboo subject, but. Yeah. It is reality for a lot of people. And when he was younger, he would party, but, it just wasn't a lifestyle that he wanted to live. And he doesn't have substance abuse issues.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there is a stereotype here that for you, like a kid who grew up the way you grew up in the setting with the drugs, with your mom like that, you do either go one of two ways. You either become that or you do the opposite. And I take it from this call, you're doing the opposite. But how did you navigate not falling into that?
So it's funny that you say that because I've gotten straight up people are so bold in these small towns, like because they think they do know everything about you, from what they've, come to hear and see. I mean, I've had people just straight up be like, why aren't you a tweaker too? Or just like, just really insensitive things. Or like, when I've always been like heavy set my entire life. And then when I moved out of this town and started having like a different life, I lost some weight and I went back to my hometown. And I mean, I had people like, oh my God, you look great. Are you on meth? It's not meth, is it? Just like straight up to my face, like just no shame, just so rude and, ignorant. But I don't know. I just don't have an answer to that really that's like solid. I just, I don't have addiction issues with substances at all. And I just think that sometimes the cycle has to stop somewhere. And I guess I'm trying to be that stop, right? And I worry for my siblings and because everybody does handle it so differently. I don't know what their future holds. I don't know if they'll have substance abuse issues. It's one of my biggest fears, because I'm close with them. I just really hope not. But this is like a long line of this. My family suffers from this on both sides. And if that means I don't have kids, that means I don't have kids. I mean, it's not. It's got to stop somehow, I feel. That's how I feel about it.
Are you studying psychology? Are you trying, like, do you want to become a psychologist? Like, where did you get this amazing, psych and intuitiveness to yourself without that being shown?
I don't have like a college education at all.
You're very smart.
Well, thank you. I don't know. I've always been more mature for my age. I've always been told that. And I think it's just because I kind of had to be when I was a kid. But I don't know. Like, I was my parents' reason for many, like, I was their reasoning for a lot of different things, like, my whole life. And I just have this sense of maturity, I guess, since I was younger. And but I don't have an answer for these questions. Like, I have people ask me that a lot, but it's just like I wish I could tell people, like, because whenever I do, talk about my situation, people are always like, you seem so much older. How are you not a tweaker? Or just like, the typical questions like that. But I don't know. I just always had a different outlook, I guess, than a lot of people.
Are you in therapy?
I'm not. I want to be really badly. Because I'm not. I didn't come out of this unscathed, I'll say that, I have a lot of like anxiety issues. And I get kind of controlling about certain things. I mean, I don't know the full extent of it even. I'm still kind of diagnosing myself all the time, like people tend to do. But
I was going to say, the fact that you're so aware of that, though, says so much. Like, that you want that for yourself.
Yeah, like I do have issues. I have anxiety really badly. I have depression sometimes. I go through bouts of depression. And like I've definitely come to realize like that I am kind of controlling about some things, but it's just like how I've dealt with things, right?
Yeah, give yourself a break. You had to survive. Those were your tools to survive.
Yeah, definitely. But no, I'm not in therapy. I would really like to be in therapy, but it's just hard to like, I've tried kind of, there was like issues with my insurance or finding a provider out here is actually really hard. I've discovered like I was trying to find somebody who's taking new clients, and it's just been like really difficult for me to find somebody who I can even talk to. I don't know. So it's something that I still do want to work in because I think I should invest in myself and my healing. But I haven't gotten there yet.
I think you're such a badass. I really do.
Thank you. That's sweet. Thank you.
So tell me, how do you get out of this town? How do you end up? Are you still with the same boyfriend you were referring to earlier?
No, but weirdly enough, he's my best friend in the world, and he's
the first boyfriend.
My current boyfriend.
Oh my
too.
God,
So
hilarious.
Well, we just grew up together, right? So it was just natural to me that I didn't want to not be friends with him anymore. But so how did I get out of this town? So I had a lot of exposure, unlike a lot of kids from this town, of what it was like to not be in a shitty little nowhere town. So, because I had family in California that I would visit once a year, and I had family down in Eugene who I adored. So I was always like been kind of a city person at heart. So naturally, when I was old enough to get the hell out of there, I was so eager to do so. And Eugene was like, I love Eugene. I would like to move back to Eugene eventually, probably. But that was just easiest for me, right? Because my plan was originally just to go to college. And then when that didn't work out, I moved back to kind of the smaller side of things, and then eventually to Portland, Vancouver. So I'm in the biggest city I could possibly be in that's nearest my family. And my dad, for the life of him, can't understand why I want to live the city life. But I mean, when you grow up there, my sister, desperate, she's going to graduate next year, and she's also desperate to just get out of there. I think my brother will stick around. He seems like he likes to kind of be in that they like their guns and their
Yeah, a small
motorcycles
town.
and their, yeah.
Just to like wrap up, where is everyone now? Not
Yeah.
physically, but how is everyone connected? Are your parents still not talking? Are you close with your siblings?
So not to be like a total sap, but honestly, it kind of has a beautiful ending. I never thought we'd be there, but things are definitely not perfect. But things are good. Like, my parents have grown up a lot. My dad still lives in the same town, and my siblings are still there going to school. But the family is healing. So my mom lives in Vancouver, Washington, so she's close. She's sober. She's like a manager at a store in a seafood and meat department, and not like dream work, but she pays her bills and she has her own apartment, and she's sober and she's healing. And I don't know, it's just crazy because I never saw this outcome, growing up, because I just never thought things would be good or okay, but things are good. And they speak and they're friends now, and we do family events together, and it's just so crazy to even think about that, like, we're here from where we started. Because
is it the sobriety that really was the door opener for all of that?
Yeah, definitely, I think. My dad just loves my mom, and my mom just loves my dad, and they can't be together because they're not good for each other. But now that my mom's sober and not exposing the kids to like terrible things, or just working on herself and being a real person, like, he just wants the best for her, and he was more than happy to have my mom in their lives again. So it's just, ever since she's gotten out, it's just been really kind of, in a way, beautiful to see that they can be in each other's lives again. And
yeah,
we all have sleepovers, or just, it's just crazy. It's just so,
I can't believe it.
To see where we started to where we've come is just so healing,
Yeah. Is there anything that you thought you'd talk about today that you want to add, or anything that, just because I don't know your story inside and out, so anything that
yeah,
you think
I
would be
think
interesting
that there's
for people?
still so much more we could dive into, but I guess the thing that I want to say at the end of this is that it's really easy to judge people, and have opinions about their addictions, or just the way that they live their life, or their parents. Like, I always got judged as a kid because of my parents, but like, you have no idea what people are really going through at home, and how much their parents are saying, please don't tell anyone. So just give people some grace, and believe that they can change, because I never thought I'd see the day where like, my family's healed and my mom's a sober person who is like a good mom, and here we are this many years later, and that's come true. So I would just say that, like, give people time to change and believe that they can.
When you were in your high school days, and that's such a small environment, were you bullied?
Oh no, so weird. I know, it's such a weird thing to think about, because I think about the dynamics.
Well, I asked that because of what you just said. I was like, were people misjudging you?
So parents did, for sure. Yeah, like, okay. I could tell that, like, there were definitely instances where, like, certain parents didn't want. I was having like a little Super Bowl party, at our house. It's not like anything was going to happen, but like, certain parents didn't want their kid to be able to come over and hang out with me because of my mom, basically. And people still have opinions about me in that small town, for sure. Like, and there's people I don't get along with because of it, or just the way that they've contributed to my mom's life deteriorating. It's hard to look at people like that now, and think that they considered themselves a friend to her or my siblings, or cared about my siblings. And it's just like, I just want to punch them. It's just like, get real. But no, I wasn't bullied in high school. I was actually prom queen and always class president, or not, homecoming queen. Sorry, stupid. It's like it matters, but
it's okay. No one's gonna fact check.
But like, I don't know. I just, despite all of this, I was still very, like, present in my school, and I had good friends and all of that. Yeah, even though everybody knew what was going on for the most part. Like, the school didn't really judge me, so that was good. But yeah, no, I wasn't bullied or anything. There's not like a whole lot of bullying going on in that school system that I noticed. Like, and if there ever was like someone picking on another kid, I would just be like, bro, stop. Like, this is
so small that I almost feel like you guys had each other in check.
We're basically siblings. Like, just be nice to each other.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But you mentioned earlier, just to go back for a second, you mentioned earlier, like, you were like, there are so many crazy situations I was in with the tweakers. Can you just give us one story or anecdote?
I mean, one time I frickin' broke into somebody's house with my mom because they stole her Wi-Fi at tweaker activities. That's what we always say, like, in my hometown. But, so my mom was, like, living in that trailer, like I told you, and she had, like, no running water or, like, electricity was spotty because, I mean, she, like, an extension cord, like, so she had, like, a Wi-Fi extender thing, and some tweakers stole it off of her trailer. So then I'm pissed because I can't even check in on my mom or my siblings and how they're doing, and they're, you know, it's just obviously not a good situation. And so my mom knows who it is that stole her fucking Wi-Fi router. And so we go in there, and I'm just like, so, like I said, I was very angry back in these days about just my circumstance. So we just like busted into the house, and my mom goes running upstairs, steals it back, and the tweaker girl's just like screaming at us, but she won't come near us because she knows that we're ready to fight. And like, I mean, that was just like one situation. So, I mean, I was like breaking into somebody's house, and I think back now, I'm just like, oh my God, just madness. Like, what the hell was that? You know?
Yeah, just chaos.
Yeah, literal chaos.
Oh my God. Okay, well, my final question is, well, it's usually where's the go-to spot to eat. And I don't know whether, well, I guess we're not talking about your town. So where will you tell us your favorite go-to spot where you are now, or in Portland, or any of these places?
Portland. I was prepared for this question because I obviously listened to the podcast. So it has a weird spelling, so give me just a second. I gotta find it. But basically it's like this Hawaiian, Filipino, fusion place in Portland, and they're just known for like their ridiculously large like portions that they just like, and everything's so good basically. So like they'll give you like this big to-go box, and they can't even close it, they just rubber band it, and the food is so good, and they're like they're like small family business. I really recommend it. It's called Grind with Tries, and I'll spell it out. So it's Grind, Wittryz. You have to go on their Instagram, type that in, and look at their menu because it changes daily. I mean, they're great.
What's your go-to order?
So they have these things called spicy bombs. And so basically it's like inari stuffed with sushi rice topped with like spicy poke. So that's one of them. They have like lechon, which is like a pork belly dish bomb. They just do like the most crazy wild dishes, and they're such good people, it seems like. So I really recommend going